Welcome everyone to the 12th installment of the Senior Leadership Insight Series, which is sponsored by the Graduate School and offered in partnership with the Department of Psychology and Neuroscience. This series was created and developed by a group of volunteers from the Graduate Board of Visitors, some of whom may join us in the audience today. My name is Melissa Bostrom, and I am the Assistant Dean for Graduate Student Professional Development in the Graduate School. To make the most of our focused time together, I'll address a few logistics up front. We'll begin the conversation with 6 key questions that we ask each of our featured guests. And after that, we'll welcome your questions. If you'd like to speak, you can use the raise hand option accessible through the reactions button in the lower right-hand corner of your Zoom window. This session is being recorded, so if you prefer not to appear in the recording, please keep your video muted, and you can simply share your questions in the chat. With those details out of the way, I'd like now to introduce Jiawei Liu, who is a PhD candidate in psychology and neuroscience. Her expertise is in auditory neuroscience, and she's interested in leveraging her expertise in an industry role when she completes her doctoral studies. Aptly then, she is working with the Duke Career Center on the Accelerate to Industry initiative designed to support humanities and social sciences PhD students in building their skill sets to transition to diverse career options. So, Jiawei, I'll turn things over to you to introduce our special guest today, Dr. Wanda Wallace.
Thank you, Melissa. So our guest today, Dr. Wanda Wallace, is a rare triple graduate of Duke. She received her bachelor's degree in mathematics and psychology, her master's in arts in teaching, and her PhD in psychology from Duke. After completing her doctorate, she stayed on at Duke, eventually serving as associate professor of marketing at Fuqua School of Business, followed by administrative roles as associate dean of executive education and executive vice president of Duke Corporate Education. She eventually decided to start her own company, Leadership Forum, to change the quality of conversations, whether those are about strategy and insight, performance and feedback, team dynamics, conflicts and interpersonal differeces, or inclusion, trust, and collaboration. The company has continued to grow since its founding in 2002, and Dr. Wallace serves as managing partner. In 2019, she published the book, You Can't Know It All, Leading in the Era of Deep Expertise, and is the host of the podcast, Out of the Comfort Zone. It's a pleasure to welcome Dr. Wanda Wallace back to Duke virtually for today's conversation.
Thank you.
All right, so my first question, please tell us about your background. What was your path to your current role?
Okay. This could be an hour-long story talking about my path to my current role. I will just tell you it is anything but linear. So, my career and many people's career, you start out on one path thinking you're going to do something, and an opportunity appears and you decide to take it, and it changes the course of your career. And that is true in my career too. So I started out intending to be a psychology professor. Then I intended to be a marketing professor and was. And then I turned into, quite accidentally, a trainer and teacher on teams, building great teams. And that's because in my undergraduate days at Duke, I'd been deeply involved in this Outward Boundish-like program called Project Wild. And so suddenly we were doing this thing in the curriculum at Fuqua, and I had expertise, and I said, count me in. And the net result is I ended up leading the thing. And then that led to the next and led to the next and led to the next. And then I was running executive education at Fuqua, meaning dealing with corporate clients. There is no part of my background that prepared me to deal with corporations, except suddenly I'm in the deep end, I'm going to learn to do it, and off we go. And then at some point in time, I got tired of academic life. It wasn't the place I wanted to be, and I decided to be an entrepreneur. Again, something I'd never planned to do. Here we are. And a research question posed from a client for which I thought I had the answer, launched a research project, a book, and again changed the course of my career and the work that I'm doing. And as a result, I ended up not building exactly the business I thought I would build, but a slightly different. And as a result, now I'm a coach a lot. I'm a speaker a lot. I'm an author a lot. And that's on we go. So it's not linear. You get started, an opportunity comes, you decide to take it, and stuff opens up.
Yeah, great. I think I've heard about it. Like many people do the same thing. They just grab the opportunity when it comes.
I often say to people, to younger people starting in their career, that the most important thing to do is pick the industry. So let's say that you were interested in healthcare industry, for example. Once you get into healthcare, you're going to find hundreds of kinds of jobs that you had no idea you could do or be qualified for. And your degree is the starting point, but it doesn't dictate what you do or don't do later. So you should go and look for those opportunities. But the industry helps you kind of frame where you're getting started.
Yeah, that's a good point. Let's move on to the second question. Can you tell us about your organization and describe a typical day for a PhD level hire?
Okay. All right. So as an organization, we work with leaders that are all in large corporate organizations, helping them basically do a better job. And that means a better job of inspiring their teams, a better job of bringing their teams together to be a functioning group, a better job of having all the tough conversations that are required, a better job of elevating their game as a leader at each step they take in their career, managing the conflict, building the trust, navigating the politics, influencing all their stakeholders, and ultimately, at the end of the day, all of that has to add to a better business results. So, I just fundamentally believe if I help leaders do a better job, I elevate everybody's careers and we're going to get better results at the end of the day. That's what we do. Okay. Now, a typical day, I can't say for a PhD hire because we don't hire PhD students directly out of school. That's not what we do. But if you wanted to come and join my company and do what I do, I thought the simplest way to give you an example is to give you a slice of today. So I started today with a webinar for a client. It happened to be AbbVie in the pharmaceutical industry. That meant I spent 30 minutes chatting with a senior leader who had turned up and the sponsor of the entire program, and then I get to do my webinar. And then I have a bajillion emails, and I need to make posts on social media. And then I have to talk to somebody who wants to consider me as a coach, which means I'm in competition with 3 other people as potential coaches. So I've got to convince him in 30 minutes that I'm the best hire. Okay, welcome to my world. You are constantly selling yourself one way or the other. And then I did a podcast prep because I do a podcast. And then I had a document that I had to get written. And now here I am talking to you. And I'm going to finish the day by going to meet my team at one of my clients for a wrap up of the program they're doing. It's varied. No 2 days are the same, but it's similar. There's always one part of thinking and writing, one part of pitching for new business, trying to get a new client, build a new relationship, and one part actually doing the work, whether that's coaching or teaching or running a class.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's very different.
It is very different.
Yeah.
Great fun, but very different.
Yeah, I got that. You enjoy it a lot, it seems.
Love it.
All right. So what do you see as the value that doctoral training has added to your professional trajectory?
Okay, 3 things. Number one and foremost in my mind, and apologies to Melissa and Angela if I offend them about Duke, but the degree itself has a lot of credentials. So the fact that I have a PhD at the end of my name gives me cachet in entering, and that has just been enormously worthwhile. And I have to also say, for Melissa and Angela and your credit and everybody else, the Duke name doesn't hurt. So it's been a good boost for me. So that's been really positive. So that's the number one thing for sure. The second thing that I think is really important is, particularly today, you get so much pop research that's out there. And the training and understanding how research is done allows me to critically examine that research and say, is that valid or not valid? And I'll give you an example. There was a pop article just published last week, picked up in Wall Street Journal about research. I won't pick on anybody's research program because this is terribly unfair, but at a prestigious university, not at Duke. And the Wall Street Journal picked up the conclusion of it. And I read the conclusion with one of my colleagues and say, don't buy it. And you go back to look at the research protocol and say, perfectly valid research protocol, but that invalidates the conclusion because it was done in a particular way. So it doesn't apply as much to corporations. It's that critical thinking that I would not have had without the PhD program. And then the third thing I'm going to say from psychology is that there is a core base knowledge about how the human brain works. I mean, we were just talking about that before this started. And everything is built on that ultimately. I mean, yes, we found out new things in the last 15, 20, 30 years. But you still are building on this base of core research knowledge that just having that background means that whatever is coming out in the business field or somewhere else, I've got a base to build on.
Yeah, I just felt like so much echoing in my heart while you were talking about critical thinking and also understanding of humans as humans. Not yet so much about the name of Duke, I guess, because I'm still in school, I assume.
Yeah.
But yeah, great. So my next question is, beyond strong research skills, what other skills, experience, or training are important for success in your field?
Okay, a ton. Like the research skills are just the tip of the iceberg. So you need great relationship skills. Because if you think about what I'm doing, I am constantly walking into a new office with a new set of people and building rapport with them. So being able to make people comfortable with me in a very short period of time is an essential skill. Some people are better at it than others. All of us can get better at it. So like that's just a number one thing I would say. But we never talk about the importance of being able to present your ideas and present them persuasively to a broad audience, or the ability to write not your academic publications, but write for the masses so people understand what you're doing and why it's important. And we don't talk about marketing because at the end of the day, you are marketing yourself, whether you're in a business for yourself, like for me, or whether you're working in a large corporation. You are constantly selling your skills and your capabilities. And how do you do that? And then you got to have these incredible listening skills to be able to sort through what is it of all the things they're saying that you really have to drill down on and get deeper in. And then I personally believe you just have to have huge curiosity and openness because at the end of the day, you've got to keep pace with what's happening in the business that you're in. Whatever's new, whatever the next challenge is. And that, people in my field who say, I learned all the models I needed to know 10 years ago will be out of business shortly. So it's a constant learning. So that inquisitiveness is critical.
Yeah, that's great. I feel like many of the skills are kind of like you're not specifically trained for, like explicitly on those skills, but with your PhD is kind of like you're prepping yourself in some of the ways. But yeah, as you mentioned, maybe we should try to emphasize those skills as well, like during the training. My next question is, are there any skills, training, or experiences you wish you'd had in grad school to prepare you for your current career path?
I wish I had better training as a graduate student on how to position myself as a professional. All right. So if you think about it, I got trained in how to write an academic paper. All right. I didn't get trained, though, on how to get myself onto a panel, let's say, in a professional organization, or how to volunteer in a professional organization in order to build my reputation, or how to network at any kind of event. I didn't get trained on any of the social media that we now need, like LinkedIn, or writing editorials even in newspapers, or writing short papers that are going to be widely read. I mean, how do you position yourself so that people want to tap into your knowledge and your experience is just not part of the training, because the assumption is that you go straight into an academic and that's a sort of well-honed path. And actually, even there, I don't think it's particularly well trained how to position yourself. Now, I don't know enough about the Move to Industry program, and so maybe some of this is getting covered in that. But I just desperately wish I had that. Now, quite by accident, purely by accident, I did get some insight on how to get a book contract and what to do when it happens, and what can go wrong in a book contract. And it was a sheer accident. I happened to be meeting with a graduate dean about something completely else, and he was asking, and I had just gotten a contract from a book, and he said, "Oh, that's just the starting point." And I'm like, So just that, how does it work once I leave graduate school in positioning myself? I wish there was more of that.
Yeah, I think I myself felt like graduate school and career center are doing better and better in that sense, like trying to get students more exposed to the tools and also different aspects of like life after grad school, like the senior leadership insight is one of them. Yeah. So my last question, what can students who would like to work in this field or explore it further do to prepare?
Okay. All right. So just in case anybody doesn't know, so I work for myself, but you could also do something very similar to the work I do in a large corporation, and it would typically be in the areas of human resources in some capacity. Sometimes you find people doing very similar work in the strategy space, or in an organizational transformation space where they're trying to move the organization from one place to another. And increasingly in some of the data analytics, because we're looking at the data to say what are the implications and how do we get people to do things differently as a result. So there are plenty of places that you could go to do very similar kind of work. The thing that you have to understand, though, whether you work outside a corporate or work in a corporation, is you've got to understand how that organization works. And by that I mean, how does it make money? Because if it doesn't make money, it's not going to keep you employed for very long. So how is it making money? So where is its customers? Who are its key competitors? What's the model, the core model by which money is made? And most organizations are actually relatively simple in essence. Very complicated if you get to know the whole story, but they operate kind of basically. Like if I give you an example, an insurance company collects premiums, invests those premiums, uses the return on those investments to pay for whatever goes wrong on your insurance policy. If anybody knows insurance, I just did a very simplified version of it. But if I don't understand that, then I can't understand what people are trying to accomplish, where the obstacles are for them, what kind of competitive moves. And I just see too many people in my field who are neither curious about how the business works or uninformed. And leaders are not going to listen to you. They're going to listen if you can't speak their language and understand a bit about their world. So get to know the organization.
Yeah, that's super, super important, I feel like. And there's definitely like a language gap between school and the business world.
It's learnable. It's not that hard to learn. Like if you are interested in the business world, one of the simplest things that I think you can do is to read Harvard Business Review. You will pick up the language fairly quickly. I mean, if you don't like HBR, then read MIT's, or sign up for Fuqua's online newsletter, and so that you're just constantly reading those articles and beginning to pick up the themes and topics.
Yeah, sounds good. I'll probably subscribe to one of those. I see someone raised their hand. Spencer?
Hi, yes. So you mentioned how you changed careers a ton of times, and I'm just curious to understand your process of whenever you go through that decision making of should I switch careers? What sort of things do you look for? How much do you eye up the jump before you make a leap into something new? And are there times that you've passed things up?
Let's see, have I passed things up? Yes, I have passed things up, much to a few advisors' dismay at the things that I passed up. I don't know that there's a systematic way I've done this, Spencer, other than saying to looking at the opportunity and to say, how interested am I in that opportunity? I don't think I looked far ahead to say, where does this opportunity take me? I would, if I were advising you today, I'd say, what does that set me up to do another move from now? But sometimes you can't know. Like, there is no way that I would have thought putting my hand up to say, I know something about experiential education. I have a passion for it and some experience, and I'd like to help redesign Fuqua's intro curriculum for our MBA students, that would lead to what it led to. I just couldn't have predicted that. And so sometimes, you take it because and I think that at the end of the day, the best I can tell you is if you're not passionate about it, don't do it. If you're not excited about it, if it's an expedient job move, it's the wrong one. And I hear that from the people I coach all the time. So there's a little bit of chasing your passion. And I think sometimes when I've made a decision to leave a position, it's because I was unhappy in some way. I lost the passion for what I was doing, or I lost interest in the way it was being done, or I just needed to find a different route because it wasn't working. And I told you the story as if everything worked. It didn't. It didn't. I mean, I made one move in my career that was a near disaster. I took a job. It was in my first leaving Duke. I took a job with a small business, and I discovered very quickly that there were more gremlins hiding in that business than I wanted to know about. And I exited very rapidly, much to a lot of people's dismay, but it was more than I thought was reasonable to go through. So, sometimes you make a mistake, you got to call it early and move on.
Thank you.
Well, if you don't mind, I'll jump in with a question.
Please.
So you mentioned HBR and the other newsletters, and I'm curious what you do each day to stay on top of everything, like what your routine is, because there's so much out there right now. It's a fire hose. And to maintain your credibility and be an expert when you go and meet with your clients and prospective clients, what is your routine for staying on top of the latest and greatest information?
You can't keep up with all of it. I don't care what you do. So you just have to admit I can't keep up on all of it and hope that the big things pop in your direction and, or somebody tells you about them and you pick up on it. I do subscribe to a couple of newsletters that I find online are really helpful. And, when you tailor some of those, they've been really insightful. One of my favorites happens to be Strategy Plus Business. It's PwC's publication. It's another one. It's a free one, and it's a super easy one to kind of get some highlights. So that would also be a great place to sign up for. But the real secret sauce I have, Angela, that I never would have guessed is doing a podcast. So I started doing podcasting 9 years ago. I did it with the expectation that I would do 13 episodes and not another one. 9 years later, an episode every week. And my executive producer, who got me talked into doing this, said, you're going to want to do it because you will meet people you wouldn't meet otherwise. And he is absolutely true. So now I get publicists calling me and saying, here's the latest, greatest book. Don't you want to feature this person on your podcast? And then I get an hour to talk to somebody about their life's work. I mean, how cool is that? And it gives me a chance to call people I would never pick up the phone randomly and say, hey, can we talk? So that's really my secret sauce, Angela.
How long does it take to review all the material for these people before a
There are some
podcast?
tricks. I have to tell you, there's some wonderful tricks. If you don't know Blinkist, do you guys know this one? Blinkist.com. It's an app. It gives you a lovely summary of most of the popular books. So it's a 5-minute read as opposed to an hour read. I will also tell you, after you've done a few of these, you learn really quickly that you don't need to read the whole book to get the gist of it. So, give me an hour and I've got there. You probably already know that in your academic publications. You can pick it up and kind of pretty quickly get through that article without reading front to back, unless it's kind of way out of, it's the same. You get the same thing in my field as well. So Blinkist is wonderful. There's another one called Get Abstract that I use as well. And what it does is to give you a nice, 3, 4, 5-page summary. And from there I know. But today, to sell a book, you have a publicist who creates a summary for you with a sample set of questions. And then you Google the person, you see what they posted on LinkedIn, you look at one of their video tubes, you look at Blinkist, you look at the Amazon chapter content, and you got a pretty good idea in 45 minutes if this is worth your time. 30, sometimes less. So you learn to skim. You learn to do a lot of skimming.
I think we have one more question from the register survey. Oh, actually, Chase, do you want to ask your question? I think he's in the audience.
Yes. It's more of just a general leadership question.
Sure.
But the question was, is micromanaging really a bad thing for successful leaders?
The short answer, yes. The only time you can micromanage is when you have a performance problem. Somebody's not doing the job and you're going to start the process of getting them fired. And in that case, you need to micromanage. But here's the deal. The reason micromanaging is so bad is because it's demotivating. Everybody wants that sense of freedom to go and figure it out for themselves in some degree. Now, I don't want infinite freedom. I want some guidelines. But then I want that freedom to go learn it, figure it out, test it out, get my own experience. That's what we all love. That's why you're probably all doing PhD programs in some way. So a manager that tells you everything to do, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, cuts off your ability to go figure it out. And then when they come back and say, well, have you done 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9? It's like, is this in school where I'm reporting my homework assignments? Terribly demotivating. Now, as a manager, I need you to do those 15 things. Yes. So the secret sauce is how I get you to do them without telling you to go do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and how I check that you're actually on track without undermining your ability to figure it out for yourself. And that is the art of leadership.
Okay, thank you.
Well, I cannot think of a better place to leave this conversation about leadership with an expert on leadership. Thank you so much to our audience members for your wonderful questions today. It has been just an absolute delight to feature Dr. Wanda Wallace in this conversation. And I thank Jiayue Liu for her able and willing and enthusiastic service as the interviewer for today's conversation. We look forward to future offerings in this series, and we hope you'll join us for more conversations with senior leaders reflecting on the value of their Duke education. Good afternoon, everyone.